Almost a whole year later from release, Sonic Frontiers has reached its final horizon. With all 3 major Sonic Frontiers updates finished, I want to look back on Sonic Frontiers' incredible journey from start to finish, explain my thoughts on the game, and analyze its impact on the future of Sonic. So, are you ready to get into this, Bengal? She's very excited, and yeah, I have a Bengal cat named Bengal. Come at me, home skillet. Sonic Frontiers was shrouded in mystery before its release, much of it due to how long the game was in development for. The director of Frontiers, Morio Kishimoto, has stated that it took them 5 years to complete the game, which is much longer than usual Sonic titles. Furthermore, Sonic Forces was the last 3D Sonic game to release, and that came out in 2017, and it was straight trash! So it was as if nothing mainline-wise really came out since 2013's Sonic Lost World. And even that was very much different and was stuck on the Wii U, which no one owned, but was eventually ported to PC. So if anything, the last great mainline Sonic game was 2011's Sonic Generations. Frontiers eventually released in 2021, a whole decade later. So us Sonic fans were straight up starving for anything. And then the leaks started flooding in around mid-2020 about some game named Sonic Rangers. What intrigued us Sonic fans was that this new Sonic game would be Sonic's first attempt at a true open world game, which is somewhat false, but we'll get into that later, and would also have a combat system. After more and more leaks and a cinematic teaser trailer, we finally got our first look at the game in IGN's first series. And what the flippin' dippers, Sonic Frontiers did not receive much positive reception, with many stating how lifeless the open world looked and noticing its lack of momentum. And were us Sonic fans shocked, bamboozled even? No, we've been washed up in the Sonic cycle for generations. But this was an early build of the game that was first shown, and once people got to preview the game and more of the finished product was actually displayed, it was evident that Sonic Frontiers was actually shaping up to be something quite special. There's also a small prologue comic that explained that Sonic and friends were visiting the Starfall Islands to look for the Chaos Emeralds. In addition, there was a highly enjoyable prologue animation focusing on Knuckles and how he became trapped on the Starfall Islands. So with all that introduction out of the way, let's finally talk about the game itself. And let's start with the story of Frontiers, which, oh snack zoinks, us diehard Sonic fans probably flipped out in certain places, but for all the best reasons. Kishimoto was in charge of the direction of the story, while Ian Flynn was tasked with the dialogue and other details of the story. And many will know Ian as a longtime Sonic the Hedgehog comic book writer. This was an amazing decision by Sega and Sonic team to get this man on the game. For a while, Sonic stories were too simple or too over the top and didn't really embody the best characteristics of many of Sonic's friends, but this all changed in this game. Sonic Frontiers took a more grounded, darker shift in tone and added a true sense of urgency, at least for a Sonic game, to save Sonic's friends and figure out the history of these islands. And with this darker tone came a new voice direction for Roger Craig Smith's Sonic, in which Sonic is now speaking much more deep. Low-key, Roger is bringing back his Batman voice. But this voice change did indeed fit the mood of the game. Sonic is for the most part alone on an island he knows nothing about, searching for his lost friends. Some strange voice guides Sonic throughout the game, essentially telling Sonic that he must collect the Chaos Emeralds and then become Eren Yeager to destroy the Titans and tear down the walls between dimensions. Sonic takes this advice and believes it will also help save his friends. But major spoiler warnings from here on out, since I will be discussing many major plot elements, including the end, which is actually a really good pun, come to think of it. Anyway, Sonic visits each island and breaks his friends out of their prison, but not out of cyberspace. Each time he does so, he becomes more corrupted with cyber energy, essentially displaying how far Sonic will go for his friends. But we've seen that time and time again in other games. But you know who hasn't seen anything like this before? Sage, a new character brought into the Sonic lore. She is an AI created by Eggman with the purpose to learn and control as much as she can about the Starfall Islands and keep Eggman safe. She pops up from time to time and basically talks that ish to Sonic, telling him his efforts are in vain, but she eventually comes around on Sonic's side due to Sonic's selflessness and love for his friends. And she realized what she wanted most was to be loved by her father, Dr. Eggman. And the crazy thing is, Eggman doesn't fly off on his Eggmobile to go grab some cyber milk. Nah, he actually does see Sage as his child. This is demonstrated further in the Egg memos collected by Fishing. Eggman praises Sage throughout a lot of these memos and even talks about how he is superior to those who make and give birth naturally, because anyone can do that. But you see, Eggman did that ish with his mind, perhaps the ultimate form of Riz. One memo that stuck out to me and maybe provides some context on why Eggman does actually care for Sage was a memo that spoke about Eggman's past. He explains how his family would praise Maria, who was long shot in the head by the government at this point, when he was there the whole time. So sad. Or maybe Eggman low-key likes to raise things. He did have a Chow Garden. Sage isn't the only new piece of Sonic lore added from this game. Nope, there's a whole new species or 2 new species depending on how you look at it added to the game. Throughout the story, Sonic and friends will help out some Coco, and by doing so will uncover what happened on the islands in the past. What we basically find out is that there was once a very ancient species, fittingly named the Ancients, that sought refuge on Earth due to some being wiping out their home planet. But they didn't just happen to choose Earth. Nope, they landed on Earth due to the Mastered Emerald. And this is where us Sonic lore geeks whip out the Miles Electric and take notes, because the Chaos Emeralds were originally with the Ancients and the Emeralds reacted to the Master Emerald, which was on Earth. Furthermore, the Ancients are actually ancestors to the Chow, which explains their similar appearance to Chaos Zero. Eventually though, the same entity that wiped out the Ancients' homeworld came back and finished the job. Now all that's left of the Ancients are the Titans that they created to fight that entity, robots, cyberspace, which harnessed the ancient streams of memories, other structures, and the Coco. The Coco were originally lucky charms from the Ancients, but somehow these charms inherited the memories of some of the Ancients, which makes the scenes where the Coco just lay down and get unalived a bit less morbid, but definitely no less funny. So in the end, you discover the end, literally. The entity that killed off the Ancients was the voice that Sonic heard, and basically Sonic helped free it, and now it's coming to destroy all life in the universe. Just because. I will admit, I love the build up to the end. We got to witness all these cataclysmic events take place, and now we somehow have to stop that sort of power. In order to stop the end, Sage asks permission from her father to control the Supreme Titan and help Sonic destroy the end. Not gonna lie, I actually love how Eggman knows he has to let his daughter make this decision, even if he knows he may never see her again. And that's exactly what happens. She gets unalived. She really became Chip 2.0, but technically I think Chip is still alive, just under the earth. But she does make a heroic sacrifice to defeat the end. I just wish Sage came into her personality a little bit sooner, and that her relationship with Eggman was fleshed out a bit more on screen to give her sacrifice a bit more emotional weight. Since this fight is the current topic of discussion, I really disliked how the main boss battle was just this, the hacking minigames. At first, I did enjoy the challenge it presented, but I thought it was phase 1 of the fight and not the whole fight. Sonic Frontiers went insane with the supersonic boss fights, and not to get one at the end was almost criminal. Plus, I disliked how the final boss was The Rock. In the end, the heroes get to ride off into the sunset and don't bother to give their condolences to Eggman, who is devastated, or even think about Sage. However, Eggman does decide to recreate Sage. The story wasn't anything too crazy, but it kept me intrigued, and for a Sonic game, that's a huge plus. However though, there is one thing that this game got right in terms of the story, and that was the character direction and dialogue. Each one of Sonic's friends is handled with so much care. Amy is treated as an actual character with her own dreams that she wants to accomplish, even if that separates her from Sonic. Knuckles is once again a competent rival to Sonic, but also a great friend. And oh, Snackazoinks, Tails gets his redemption arc. Ian Flynn addressed how Tails has been inconsistent in his actions, once being the hero of Station Square, to then crying in a corner when attacked by a Phantom Ruby version of Chaos Zero. Tails now wants to prove he can be a hero in his own right and doesn't need Sonic to constantly save him. I also love how previous events in Sonic Canyon are mentioned. I even mentioned how an event in the game reminded me of a previous Sonic thing that occurred. The heck is shooting down there below? Dark Gaia. I'm just kidding.
Whatever assaulted the island sure packed a punch. That was on par with Dark Gaia.
Wow, dude, I made the reference. He made the reference. That's amazing. I love that. And bingo bonzo, it was then addressed in the game. All the joy and pain this franchise has caused me all felt so rewarded in these instances. But story isn't why people play Sonic games. No, we want to know how it feels to go fast, how it feels to be Sonic. Nonetheless, to go over that, let me first explain Frontier's gameplay cycle. Each island or open zone environment, not open world, requires Sonic to find and unlock all the Chaos Emeralds. Chaos Emeralds are collected 2 different ways. A few emeralds will be obtained through side missions done with the Coco and Sonic's friends. To start these side missions, you must find and pick up a bunch of memory tokens scattered all throughout the islands. Other Chaos Emeralds will need to be unlocked. To unlock these Chaos Emeralds, you need Volt Keys. To obtain Volt Keys, you need to complete missions in cyberspace or find them in open zones. To access cyberspace stages, you have to gather gears. To collect gears, you need to defeat enemies or mini bosses. The island's mini bosses were definitely hit or miss on enjoyment. I had fun fighting the different ninjas, Azura, Sumo, and a few others, but other fights were just so needlessly long. The QTEs that need to be done to finally get an opening on the shark fight takes forever. Squid and Fortress take a while as well. But what really breaks the flow of just exploring these islands is accidentally engaging in one of these fights that suck you right in and forces you to do battle in order to do any other task. To defeat these enemies, you must use Sonic's new combat system. Sonic now be throwing them hands and can shoot and kick shockwaves. There's a plethora of new abilities Sonic has at his disposal that can be unlocked using skill points, which can be obtained by defeating enemies. These moves look amazing and are genuinely things I imagined Sonic doing when I was a young bull playing with the old Jazzware Sonic toy line. However, the moves are pretty clunky to use, and sometimes I'm hitting the correct combinations of buttons for a special move to come out, but it doesn't. Furthermore, they all sort of function the same. Their only purpose is to do some sort of damage. Some moves take longer to do damage than others, so why would I use those moves besides the fact that they look cool? Perhaps Frontiers could have benefited from some sort of stagger meter, so some moves would cause more stagger to leave the opponent vulnerable for a period of time, and others would do more damage. There's also a parry system in the game, but this John is insanely broken. There's no timing necessary to use it, and I can hold it forever, waiting for an opponent to strike, even in the air. The major new mechanic or move is the side loop, and I'll admit, I love this ability. I love circling around enemies and seeing them go flying in the air. Plus, it's used pretty smartly at times for other mini bosses. The side loop isn't just a tool to use to destroy enemies though. It can be used to draw circles to collect rings and other items. It can be used to draw an infinite symbol to gain access to infinite boost gauge for a period of time, and it's also used to solve many of the puzzles scattered around the islands. I enjoyed the puzzles that utilized the side loop ability besides the ones that were only available at night. You would either have to sit there and wait for nighttime to come, or go and do something else and then try to make it back at night and hopefully have enough time to finish the puzzle before daytime arrives. The puzzles in general were pretty meh besides the time trials, like what the flippin' dippers, why are we playing Tetris? However, I wouldn't really want any sophisticated puzzle in a Sonic game since it would break up the flow of just running around the island. Solving these puzzles reveals more of the island's maps and markers. Okay, so now that the general flow of the game and combat has been explained, let's talk about probably the most important aspect of a Sonic game, and that's Sonic's movement. First, I need to state how great it is that Sonic Team allowed for an array of settings regarding Sonic's movement. We can customize Sonic's initial boost speed, turning speed, top speed, and more. But it is important to note that these settings only translate to the open zone environments and not Sonic's movement in cyberspace. Overall, I think Sonic feels great. He's a lot lighter and far from being stiff like he felt in his Forces. He is a bit slow without the power boost though. Also, 3D Sonic finally has the drop dash, which can be used to help climb up some hills. However, his jumping is insanely awkward. When trying to maneuver Sonic in air after a jump, Sonic's angles are so wide. Plus, originally, all momentum from running was killed after a jump, but this was later fixed as an option that can be changed in Update 2 of Sonic Frontiers. Speaking of momentum though, there really isn't a momentum-based system when interacting with the environment, which is a huge letdown. Can't fly off ramps, but can fly off barely seen rocks. Yet, just running around these islands towards your objective, getting distracted by certain obstacles, puzzles, collectibles, cyberspace portals, and more is a blast. Rolling around at the speed of sound. Got places to go, gotta follow my rainbow. Really rings true while roaming these open zones. Playing chunks of Sonic levels and just moving from one chunk to another is so satisfying, and trying to string it all together as fast as possible is exhilarating. This is where Sonic Frontiers is at its best. My only main concern with these open zones are just the environments themselves. For the most part, they are a bit bland and do feel lifeless, which makes sense due to a mass extinction event occurring on these islands, but I do hope going forward these environments will be more Sonic-y. Also, I'm not too huge of a fan of the 2D segments on these islands. They kind of suck you in, and they're pretty hard to escape if you didn't want to be placed in a 2D plane, which is a huge problem when it comes to exploring the Dirt Island, Chaos Island, by far my least revisited open zone. In addition to that, Chaos Island is separated into many other islands, and it isn't really clear on how to navigate to those areas, so the open zones are an almost entirely 3D blast to play. But how about the cyberspace stages? For me at least, when only judging the cyberspace stages by themselves and not as part of a Sonic game, they're pretty lackluster. Sonic's boost is much lower than previous boost titles, to the point where you can no longer boost through enemies. Yet that does make enemies more of an obstacle to overcome, so there's a positive and negative to that. Even though there are plenty of cyberspace stages, there are only 4 different level themes which have been used in previous Sonic games. These being Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and a city theme, which gives off City Escape and Empire City vibes. Not only have the level themes been reused, but so has previous level designs from past 3D Sonic games. Many layouts in these cyberspace stages come from Sonic Unleashed, Generations, and Sonic Adventure 2. Hold up, did I just say Sonic Adventure 2? Not gonna lie, I actually love the stages based off Cityscape, Metal Harbor, and Green Forest. In SA2, there wasn't a boost or air dash, but now there is, so tackling these stages again felt fresh when compared to replaying other past boost title games, but this time with worse physics. However, there were some great cyberspace stages, and for the most part, they weren't just a minute long with a straight narrow path like Sonic Forces. So even though the cyberspace stages weren't nearly as good as the boost stages from Unleashed and Generations, they don't really need to be, since it's only a small part of the game. Essentially, cyberspace is a nice, meaty, enjoyable distraction from the open zones. One last thing that I need to touch on is that Sonic's speed, ring inventory, attack, and defense can all be upgraded. Speed and ring inventory is upgraded by collecting Coco scattered throughout the islands and then handing those Coco over to the Elder Coco. At first, even if you had 200 Coco on you, you could only level up one at a time, which took forever. Luckily, this was patched and you can now upgrade multiple levels at a time. Attack and defense can be strengthened by finding seeds dispersed throughout the islands or after completing a puzzle. These seeds would then need to be taken to the Hermit Coco so Sonic could power up. However, one fast way to gain any collectible, whether that being seeds, Coco, memory tokens, etc., would be to find a cyberspace portal that leads to finding Big the Cat, baby. Here, you can give big purple tokens that can be found in the open zones, so you can fish. Fishing is insanely easy this time around, dank chaos, and you can find many interesting Sonic items, a variety of sea creatures, and maps. These maps will allow for fast travel to the Elder or Hermit Coco. I gotta say, the lo-fi beat used for the fishing minigame is one of my favorite soundtracks from this game. And speaking of Frontier soundtrack, I didn't like it too much. What the flippin' dippers did this guy just say? Super stupid.
Ishmael Muhammad.
Don't get me wrong, the vocal songs are absolute bangers, but I only enjoyed a handful of cyberspace songs, and the open zone tunes kind of just blended in the background, for me at least. I know that is an unpopular opinion regarding this game's soundtrack, but this one just didn't do it for me. Yet, speaking of those adrenaline pumping vocal songs, they match up perfectly with the beyond epic Supersonic Titan boss fights. I appreciate how Supersonic wasn't just used for one boss fight towards the end, but was a recurring special event. With all these insane moves at Supersonic's disposal, these fights really made me feel like a golden flying hedge god. So I believe I have now touched on every facet of the game and what I thought about each part. So now it's time to move on to the extra content sold at the price of $3.99. Now let's go over everything in update 1 of Sonic Frontiers. The sights, sounds, and speed update included 2 new challenge modes, this being a boss rush, which included every enemy game, not just the supersonic fights. As ranking each island and then all the islands combined, unlocked extreme mode, a new game difficulty in which one landed strike on Sonic would mean an instant game over. The other challenge mode is a cyberspace speed trial. As ranking all these would grant the player access to the power boost in cyberspace. A photo mode was added to the open zone areas of the game, which was fun to play around with, even if it's pretty bare bones and not having any sort of emotes to pose Sonic in. However, by far, my favorite aspect of this update was finding all the music notes placed within all the different open zones to unlock some more bangers, songs throughout Sonic's history. This fixes one of my problems with the open zones, which was its music. Now I can pick out of a great list of Sonic songs to run to. There was also some quality of life improvements that got rid of Sonic's power boost animation and the Starfall Slight machine that would cover a great portion of the screen. Update 2 was Sonic's birthday bash celebration. To celebrate Sonic's birthday, Sonic gets outfitted in some immaculate drip, and so does the rest of the islands. There's also a banger birthday Sonic playlist that I wish you can shuffle through, but oh well, it's still fire. Another addition were new Coco challenges found on each island. Some of these challenges were actually tough, but once all challenges were completed, Sonic gets an extended boost gauge. Other challenges that can be found all over each open zone are the action chain challenges. In these challenges, you must string together as many actions as possible within a time limit to get a high score. The music for these was such a bop, and discovering the best routes and ways to string as many actions as possible together was a real joy, and yet also difficult at times. But as ranking each one nets you the iconic spin dash. And oh, Snackazoinks, is it worth it? The spin dash really brings new life to this game. It's insanely fast, and the height Sonic can get from the spin dash allows for some new creative ways to broach traversal. I can actually fly off ramps now. Heck, it even makes traversing Chaos Island a lot better. The spin dash can be used in so many different ways. You can drop from the air into a spin dash. You can rev up the spin dash just like the classic games. You can hold it down or constantly boost while spin dashing. And plus, it's also usable in cyberspace, which creates whole new ways to broach each stage. My only complaint with the spin dash is that it should have been in the base game. It's just so good. Other smaller things added to the update was New Game Plus and more options to tweak Sonic's movement, but these tweaks were actually pretty significant. You can turn on the rate of jump acceleration, but most importantly, you can now maintain boosts while in the air. Just simply amazing. But I do feel like that should have been a base game thing too. Either way, that option combined with the spin dash is awesome. So on to the last update of Sonic Frontiers, the highly anticipated Final Horizon update. This was the one Sonic fans were looking forward to the most. When we heard other playable characters in a 3D Sonic game, what the flippin' dippers, we were low-key freaking out, right? Or was it just me? But these characters haven't been playable in 3D since Sonic 06. And does that even count? no. Plus, there was going to be new story content, in which many of us Sonic fans were hoping would fix the rush ending of Frontiers. So, did this update meet the expectations of Sonic fans? Well, it blew my expectations out of the Sky Sanctuary and into Tropical Resort because I loved it. For the most part, it has its faults. But let's go over the good, starting with the playable characters. Tails, Amy, and Knuckles are playable, and they actually all have their own special moves and skill tree that can be leveled up. All their moves are bursting with their own personality. Knuckles has similar moves to his adventure days and can glide. However, his glide does have a strange pause in the air that really messes with the flow of traversal. But unlocking his unlimited glide does make gliding a much faster experience and makes up for that weird pause. The only thing really missing was Knuckles yelling "Ora ora" and saying "rats" after digging into the earth and not finding anything. Oh well, luckily that issue lives rent-free in my head, so I'm good. Amy can use her tarot cards as weapons. Not sure if that's magic or Tails hooked her up with some new weapons, but either way, it looks cool. Plus, she can glide too, but much more slowly than Knuckles. She can even combine her cards and Pico Pico Hammer to speed off. Even though Tails lacks a homing attack where every other playable character doesn't, he was the highlight for me. Once you unlock the SA2 Cyclone, it's over. This John is so OP. It covers so much ground, and you can basically travel as high as you want. And I want to fly high. However, there are two weird limitations to these characters. First of all, these characters are only playable in the new island and the update. And secondly, not only do their skills have to be unlocked, but also their ring count, speed, defense, and attack have to be increased. The latter wouldn't be too big of a problem, but all the mini bosses on the islands are maxed out and even fight different than they had before. You can still take them one as Sonic, which most players would most likely have maxed out by now. But I want to throw hands, tarot cards, or wrenches as the new characters. Either way though, I am ecstatic to play as other Sonic characters in 3D once again. There are also new cyberspace portals and stages found on the island, and these are some of the best in the game. Okay, so let's talk about the new story portion of the update. Essentially, on the last island of the game, Sage will come up to Sonic and explain a new possibility at defeating the end. This new possibility would require Sonic to take on his corrupted form again, but it would also free his friends from his body. So Sonic's superstars will go and find the Chaos Emeralds while Sonic goes on a training arc to master his cyber corruption. In order to do so, Sonic must meet and pass each previous Titan pilot's trial and the Master King's trial as well. And this is where the fun begins. Okay, I lied. This is where the controversy starts. To get to each trial, Sonic must climb a tower, and no snackzoinks, these things are difficult. One fall and you have to restart. These tower climbs really push the platforming in this game, but sometimes introduce awkward camera angles that make it a bit unfair to make the climb. However, you can change the difficulty to easy, which will load more springs to make the climb easier. I didn't think the towers were too bad though. With some trial and error, they are manageable. The trials themselves that sit at the top of the towers were for the most part easier than the climbs. The only two trials that created any sort of struggle was the Snake trial and the Master King trial. And what the flippin' dippers, the Master King trial was massively painful. In this trial, Sonic must defeat the first 3 supersonic boss fights with a ring count of 400 that carries over to each boss fight. So basically, you must beat each one within 400 seconds when in supersonic form. What makes that even more difficult is that only perfect parries will parry enemy attacks. This is where changing the difficulty will help out tremendously. By decreasing the difficulty of the game, the window to perform a perfect parry will increase, and you need to perfect parry to beat this trial. Perfect parries allow for Sonic to damage Titans while his ring count does not decrease. But for the most part, I kind of thought this trial was ridiculous, especially since I had a great run to then for the game to crash on me while I was preparing to fight the Night Titan. For a second, I just waited, expecting this to be some Sonic 06 loading screen joke, but I never got hit with the punchline. So much pain. After all the trials are completed, Sonic can then go Supersonic 2 or Corrupted Cyber Supersonic. He is warned by the Master King Coco, if he goes all out, he will lose that power permanently, which will become important later. Now with this new power, Sonic goes on to fight the base form of the Supreme Titan. Once Sonic defeats Supreme, the end enters the horizon and connects into Supreme, creating the new final boss fight. Let's go! Plus, there's an orchestral version of I'm Here playing in the background, giving me past final supersonic boss fight vibes, specifically from Sonic 06 and Sonic Unleashed. However, what those boss battles didn't have was an epic new form of supersonic. These transformation sequences are amazing to look at. So many different vibrant colors and particles exploding around Sonic. This new form gives Sonic the ability to perfect parry, which looks awesome. And just the sheer confidence Sonic gets in this form is amazing and really gets to show off some really cool poses and animations. However, even though this form is powerful, it isn't enough, and Sonic must go all out and fully awaken his new form. And now this generally looks like a new form. Sonic looks digitized and even takes some characteristics from Fleetway Supersonic with the spiral eyes and fangs. This form looks so good, but sadly it was only used for one cutscene and we didn't even get too many good looks at the transformation. And that's most likely the last we'll ever see of this transformation too, since Sonic did indeed go all out, which the Master King Coco stated will cause Sonic's new power to leave him permanently. And we as players went through so much to obtain that power too. The final boss battle was epic though, but I hated how Sonic must dodge roll into the purple tether in order to target it. It took me 2 hours to figure that out. I'm pretty sure that was never needed to target specific parts of enemies before, so why now? Anyway, once the end is defeated, Sonic friends islands are saved. And Sage is still alive? Yup, Sage is still alive and gets to go home with Eggman, who she calls her father. She'll be able to meet her brothers Orbot, Cubot, and Metal Sonic. I know many fans love the original ending for its emotional impact Sage's sacrifice had, but I still do think this ending hit the correct emotional beats as well, with Sage getting her happy ending with Eggman. But maybe that wouldn't have hit as well as it did if it wasn't for her original death in the OG ending of Frontiers. Overall, I enjoyed Update 3 tremendously, even with its crazy difficulty. But looking back at all the updates, I realized that Sonic Team was low-key preparing us for this difficulty spike. With the boss rush mode in Update 1 foreshadowing the Master King Coco trial, and the Coco challenges preparing our platforming skills for the tower climbs. Still though, that Master King Coco trial was insane. So now that Sonic Frontiers is a complete package, what do I think of it? Well, I think it's amazing, and it's arguably a top 5 Sonic 3D game. And to be honest, this will most likely be the new generation of Sonic fans' favorite Sonic game of all time. Frontiers will leave its impact on Sonic games for years to come. It is a great Sonic game, but I still think it is a rough idea on what the open zone concept is. With a more fleshed out world, enhanced combat system, allowing players to take advantage of the terrain and rewarding them with more speed, perhaps even adding more playable characters and adding new creative level themes can change the next Sonic game from being a great Sonic game to a great game. Plus, fixing bugs and making the menus less clunky to navigate will help as well. But Frontiers should definitely lay the groundwork from where Sonic goes from here, and even just through these updates, it seems like Sonic Team was really listening to fan feedback and fixing many of Frontiers' problems. In the end, the future looks bright for Sonic. I want to say I enjoyed making this video, and if anyone managed to make it this far, thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed watching it as well. If not, why were you torturing yourself to make it this far? I mean, I still appreciate it though. But truly, thank you all once again, and sayonara, home skillets.